Well, welcome tonight to Laugh Out Loud. What's so funny about God? Humour is not a quality that we normally associate with religion. If there's anything funny, often about religion, it's funny, strange, rather than funny, ha-ha. But tonight, if God does exist, what makes him laugh? That's the question we're going to have a look at together. So our host tonight is an actor. He loves Shakespeare. He's played Shakespeare with the State Theatre Company. He's also worked with the Splash Theatre Company, entertaining kids all around the country. He's turned to become an Anglican priest. He's a high school chaplain. Would you please welcome tonight our host, Dave MACGILLIVRAY, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's really great to be here tonight. It's wonderful to see you all here. Look, we really do hope, it's certainly my hope tonight, that you come with an open mind and maybe even a light heart, because we're hoping that tonight might be a change of mind for you, perhaps, understanding God in a slightly different way, maybe a way you didn't expect. And this might be one of those times where you look back and go, oh, that was a change. That was a watershed moment in my life. I don't know if you ever wonder about those sorts of times. I often wonder about what might have been. Not with regret, though. I think about things like, imagine if when they first tried peanut butter, if someone with anaphylaxis was in the testing team and they would have said, we've got this brand new wonderful thing for you. Here, have some peanut butter. Oh, what the hell is this stuff? That's never going to take off. Ladies and gentlemen, we do hope you have a good time tonight. We are hoping to have a bit of a laugh, even though we are talking about things that are a little bit serious. So it is my pleasure to introduce our first comedian for this evening. He is a good friend of mine. I had the pleasure of marrying him to his wife. I was the minister at the wedding. And he's been in the Adelaide scene for a few years. He's performed solo shows in the Fringe. He was also in the Fringe award-winning Wolf Creek, the musical. You might have, it was worth a look. You might have seen him at the Rhino Room or typing jokes on a vintage typewriter on the streets as the Joke Buster. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and have a good laugh with my friend, and I hope soon to be yours, Mr. Chris Knight.
Thanks, Dave. So, got to do the traditional joke. I just got in from the philosophy symposium, and boy, is it great to be. It's a classic opener. I don't know who in the crowd is into beatbox, but I'm going to open with a cut from a new beatbox record. Here we go. As a young white male, I have a complicated relationship with African American culture. The only track from the album. The album is entitled Every Australian Hip Hop Act Ever. So there we go. It's often at this point early in the comedy set where the comedian loses track of where they're going. So often they will write their set on their hand, perhaps on their wrist. What I do is different. I write my jokes on the back of my thumb, very small, harder to read. But at least when I don't know what I'm going to say next, I can reassure all of you, everything's going to be fine. It's all good. There's nothing written there. It's professional. Don't even have a thumb. What? Mind freaked. That's what you got. So it's been a weird day. Had a good drive here. Saw some wind farms. Round of applause. Who thinks wind farms are a good idea? Yeah? Yeah, some big fans. Some big fans. Setting the bar really low. I think that'll be the worst joke of the night. So looking forward to it going up from there. Carried on into the city, walked through the parklands. As I was walking, this is all 100% true. Code for lies. I was walking through the parkland. I looked on the ground. I found a weird parchment, an old fragmented parchment. I put the pieces together. I followed all of the clues. It led me to a hidden pirate treasure chest full of gold and jewels, which was great. But then the Australian Tax Office took it all away because of my huge student debts. Turns out, Hex marks the spot. True story. And I was carrying on through the city. I saw an old office office building that I used to work at until I was fired. I was actually fired for trying to put a male sheep in charge of holidays. I was fired because of the ramifications. The ramifications. Spoke too soon with that bar. So, so carried on walking through the city. As you do, I came across a small playground, and I thought back to my days as a child. The hardest part of playing Kiss Chasey. Do you remember Kiss Chasey? I always found the hardest part of Kiss Chasey was applying the intricate black and white Ace Frehley makeup. Kiss Chasey. It's a joke to test the age of the audience. Should have gone with the Skrillex one. Tick. So, carried on. True story. All of this true story. Walking through and I thought, I passed by a fancy bathroom show floor, upon which I decided to write a jingle for the most emotionally conflicted person in Australian society, the fancy bathroom show floor manager. Here's my jingle. A fancy bathroom show floor manager, be a bit more proud of your toilets. Fancy bathroom show floor manager, where are your toilets? They're in the back. Fancy bathroom show floor manager, I'm proud of my toilets, but I'm also ashamed. So I think that's going to take off on the radio. Hear it pretty soon. Weird songs on the radio you hear these days. What would you do if I glued down your shoes? Would you stand up and walk out on me? You wouldn't. I've seen to it. The cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, the little boy blue and the man on the moon, the dog's in the cupboard and the kids are in the microwave. I'm a bad parent. It's a song about bad parenting. You might hear on the radio. Why do birds suddenly appear every time I pull this lever-marked bird dispenser? So, songs are weird. I think I rest my case. I was continuing my walk, continuing walking around Adelaide, and I thought I probably should write some observational comedy for the gig I've got tonight. Should have done that instead of telling all these true stories about what happened today. So I thought, observational comedy. Here we go. Do you ever look at someone and you say butter wouldn't melt in his mouth, and then you look a little bit closer and you realise it's because he's dead? And then you look a little bit closer and you realise it's because he's dead of cold mouth. And then you look a little bit closer and you realise that this is a script to an episode of CSI Miami and you're David Caruso, and what the hell am I doing with my life? I mean, I used to be good. I won a Golden Globe back in 1995. But now my whole career is nothing but a punchline. I like that joke for two reasons. One is because the actual punchline is the word punchline, and the other is because it charts the career of David Caruso in joke form. When I started, you were quite interested in where it was going. It was quite good. It had a lot of potential. But as the joke continued, it was less and less funny, just plateauing out into nothingness, just like the career of David Caruso. It's a stupid joke. Again, I'm talking about the career of David Caruso. So you can't say I don't speak truth to power. As I was continuing my walk, I thought I better catch up with a friend. I went to a pub and we had a good chat. We decided to talk of time travel, a subject that comes up very often from time to time. Crushed velveteen, good thing to wear to a pub. I was chatting with him and we decided that what could you do if you could go back in time? He said, I said, well, what I'd do is I'd go back in time, I'd kill Hitler. Anyone here, you'd kill Hitler? Nods of approval. Yeah, I can just see the murderous rage in someone's eyes. You just want to kill a human being and get away with it. You don't care about Hitler's... He agrees with Hitler... No, he doesn't agree with Hitler's policy. Anyway, back to time travel. If we go back in time to that moment, I said I would try to kill Hitler, but he said, what would you do if you were not allowed to kill Hitler? Due to some kind of a time cop law, perhaps as enforced by Jean-Claude Van Damme. I said, okay, what I would do instead is I would prank Hitler. That's what I'd do. I would prank Hitler so hard, I would creep into his room night after night, and I would start to shave little bits off of his ridiculous bushy moustache, yeah? Smaller and smaller, until all that would be left of his famous large moustache is a stupid-looking tiny square. That's what I'd do if I were a time traveller. Wink! All right, I think that's been my set. I think we've all learned various things. So welcome back to the stage, Dave MACGILLIVRAY, with a round of applause.
Thank you very much. Good. Oh, stay up, stay. Oh, you have to have a drink. No, go. And then come back. Because I'm going to invite the rest of our panel up now. So please, won't you welcome Sam and Jason along with Chris. They're going to come up and we're going to have a bit of a chat and you all get to listen in. So won't you please welcome our panel. So just to get to know our panel a little bit tonight, Chris, we've met you already, but we'd want to meet you a little more. So you grew up in a Christian home, actually as a missionary kid. How do you go from being missionary kid to comedy? How does that journey work?
I don't actually know too many other missionary kids in comedy.
Okay.
So I don't think it's a normal path.
Is that a regular way that you introduce yourself?
I don't know. Please, does someone...
Meet someone at the Rhino Room, missionary kid?
Someone like me? Someone like me, please? Someone like me? No, never. I did find a wife, but she's not like me, which is good.
Very good.
In a lot of ways. So I think it was a very strange journey, and it kind of began in Adelaide. I was doing a Bachelor of Ministry, and it wasn't quite where I wanted to be creatively, but I didn't quite realise that. I ended up doing another Master of Creative Writing, but that wasn't quite where I wanted to be either. And through being in Adelaide, I found the Rhino Room, where they do and raw comedy. And my good friend Beck Hill actually won Raw Comedy South Australia.
Which year was that?
I don't remember what year that is.
2006.
2006. Jason has a photographic memory for
Someone
for everything.
Possibly came runner-up.
That's right. Would have been where I met you. It's good. And one of the other people
that's
who
why I'm second now.
who helped encourage me into comedy. She said you should do stand-up comedy. I was working at a door-knocking job with her, and was basically willing to try anything to get out of that. So.
Fair enough. Oh, thank you. Jason, you were writing a thesis on God and humour and then decided to go into comedy. How did that happen? And a question for you, what came first for you, comedy or God, and how do those things fit?
Okay, so I was at Tabor in 2002, just did a grad dip in Christian Studies and Theology. The next year I started doing a grad dip in ministry, and I was starting to write my thesis, which was called A Minister, a Rabbi and a Priest Walk into a Bar. And that was, and then in 2004, I entered Raw Comedy. My first gig was at a place called Rhino Room. I won that heat. I then won my semi, and then in 2004, I came runner-up again. And I've still got that thesis on a thumb drive, like on a 128 megabyte. It's half finished, but then I thought it's probably better just to live that out. And so from there and then I pretty much unenrolled from my masters, and then pursued comedy full on. In my show, in a friend show I did 2 years ago, I closed the show by playing a cassette tape of me telling jokes when I'm 6. And just things around the house. I'm not sure if I'll close this year's show with, I found a letter that I wrote when I was 18 about wanting to be a comedian when I was studying computer science and how much I hated computer science. And so just kind of that. In the question, God first or humour, I was brought up in a really awesome, loving Christian household. My parents are just super supportive of everything that I've ever done, and there's something, and just them getting behind me in that and just going, go do it, we support you. And so just having that background as well, but then having got myself into so many different gigs and situations and fights and stuff, which will, if you come see my Fringe show this year, I got beaten up, so it was kind of awesome.
That's cool. So see, I was the opposite. I had to, go home and tell Mum and Dad, I'm leaving the theatre, Mum and Dad, I'm going to join the church, which was a little bit weird. And Sam, this is where we play, one of these things just doesn't belong here. You're the odd one out.
I am the odd one out. Yes.
The non-comedian.
Because quick. Because
I'm the short Asian here.
not the answer I would go.
No. Okay.
So, Sam, you've lectured at a theological college. You work part-time as a doctor, holding legs for orthopaedic surgeons.
So I work as a doctor, so 1 day a week, and it's surgical assist work. And you're thinking, what is a surgical assistant? If you go to a private hospital and get an operation, afterwards you get 3 bills from the doctors. The first one is from the surgeon. You think, okay, fair enough. The second one's from the anaesthetist. You think, okay, yeah, anaesthetist. And the third one is, you think, who is this bozo sending me a third bill? Well, that's me, the surgical assistant. And so my most important job is just before you fall asleep, I've got to introduce myself, say, hi, my name is Sam, I'm the surgical assistant, and you'll be getting a bill from me in 2 weeks' time. That's the last thing you hear before you go to sleep. So my job is... So it's usually with orthopaedic surgeons. And, if you've ever had an orthopaedic operation, they're so paranoid about doing the wrong leg. And we get it right 50% of the time. If we get the wrong side, we throw the other side in for free. So it's a win-win. And, if you've ever been to the hospital, they're so paranoid. They keep asking you at every stage, like, now, which leg are we doing? Which leg are we doing? Which leg are we doing? And so, 10 different people ask you, which leg are we doing? Which leg are we doing? And then you fall asleep. And it all comes down to which leg I pick up first. And I wasn't there for any of the conversations that went on beforehand. So I'm the single point of failure when it comes to your operation.
I knew you looked familiar.
Yes,
I knew
that's
you.
right.
I was hazy.
Fortunately, my name is Chan, and there are many Dr. Chans out there. And we all look like this before you fall asleep.
It's the perfect crime. It's
Yeah,
the
it
perfect crime.
is. Yeah.
All right, mate, I've got to ask you though, Sam.
Yeah.
So...
And I only sign my name, Dr. Chan. I don't put an initial beforehand.
So in your work in theology and as a minister, how important is comedy for you, and how important is having a sense of humour in that sort of field of work?
Oh, it's important because it keeps the students awake.
Yep.
Usually they are gone within 3 or 5 minutes. Teaching at Bible college is amazing. Postgraduate education is a funny thing because if you don't give people what they pay for, they're actually thrilled about it. People pay $1,000 for lectures, and if you say, oh, listen, I've cancelled the lectures, oh, they're so happy. They paid for nothing, and they go, yes, it's cancelled. Well, how important is humour for theology? Well, what is theology? Theology is just a fancy word for just the human attempt to understand and explain God. So we have to use human means to do it. So human language, human ideas, human metaphors, and it seems to be a universal human way of talking in all cultures. It's humour. Well, all cultures except the Asian culture. Asians are very repressed. I grew up with no comedy, no laughter in my home. It was all like, just learn the piano and do your 2 times tables. Yeah. But they do have a joke. How do you know an Asian has broken into your home, your dog's missing, and your homework's been done for you?
The only man in the room who can say that joke, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So you're thinking of something, but you're not allowed to say. You've got 10 more funny jokes right now.
I'm just thinking Asian Dave Hughes.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm not allowed to do that.
All right, I've got a quote from New Scientist, March 2014. Right now, so time travel, we're back in 2014. Right now, in a high-security research lab at Northwestern University's Falk Center for Molecular Therapeutics in Illinois, scientists are tickling rats. Their goal? To develop a happiness pill. But their efforts might also produce some of the best evidence yet that humour isn't something experienced exclusively by humans. Now, aside from, rats getting in on the gig, what's the deal there? We thought it was just us. Do you think, is there comedy in the natural world? Is the world a funny place, or is that just something that we bring to the world? Jason is moving the mic.
So you
take it.
If you want to look at a chemical, at a scientific level, I guess that those rats would be producing serotonin and oxytocin, and like when you laugh, those are released, and that's a well-being and a feeling of euphoria. It's a natural release that happens. You see it when people leave comedy; they come up and they're going, "I've just had a workout," and they would have their heart rate would have increased. It's a healthy thing to do, to be laughing, and to find ways to laugh. When I was writing my thesis, like doing all this dumb research, which takes the fun out of fun. Like kids would laugh 100, 300 times a day. The average adult would laugh 6 times, and just so how much it's needed to laugh. So.
Yeah, cool. I guess part of that question is, as well, do you think humour is sort of preset?
Right.
Or is it something that we discover, or is it a preset thing? What do you reckon, Chris?
I reckon, I think it's a lot of different things. I think my sense of humour has really grown and changed and evolved, particularly from being involved in stand-up comedy and seeing lots of different things. But then there's something at its core that's remained weird. It hasn't really changed since being a kid and getting into like the Far Side cartoons and all that kind of thing. Just the only one in the family that really liked Far Side all the time, with my parents just looking going, why is that funny? My mum going, please explain this. And I'm going, I don't think I can.
Now we're back to Jason's, that takes the funny out of it.
All of the funny out
Mum,
of it.
you can see why this is funny because. Okay, Sam, what do you think?
Well, it's a nature-nurture argument, isn't it? But it seems like it's universal to mammals, so the animal kingdom. So we do laugh, and they're being forced to laugh because they're tickled. But it's always a fine line between tragedy and comedy. Tragedy is when someone else gets hit by a bus. Comedy is when you get hit by the bus. So I'm wondering whether the rats are laughing out. One of them gets hit by a bus.
I think we need to
well?
switch those.
Oh, okay,
it's funny. It's only funny when someone else. It's not funny when I get hit by a bus, man.
Right.
No. Yeah.
So, but there's an amazing chapter in the Bible where it talks about how God has programmed fun and laughter and play into his creation. And so there's this luxury built in his creation. And it's an amazing verse. It says, he's given oil to make our faces shine, bread to fill our stomachs, and wine to gladden our hearts. So we had just the bare necessity to survive. We think, okay, why do I need oil to make my face shine? I should just be happy with the way God has made me. Oil is basically cosmetics. So, Asians, the best invention around the 80s was hair product, because without hair product we'll all have a bowl haircut, but now at least with gel and product we can get it to stand up a little bit and look presentable. And basically God is saying, I've made oil product to put in your hair so you feel a little bit more happy about yourself, and that's okay. And I've given you bread. Like I could have just given you grass and a protein pill, just vitamins and nutrients to survive. But no, I'll give you bread because there's a mouthfeel and it's satisfying. And, I could give you water to hydrate you, but you know what? Wine, because it'll gladden your heart. So there's something about laughter and play. There's also a verse that God says he's even made the sea monster to frolic and play. So somehow play and laughter and gladness is programmed, hardwired into the way we're made.
I like that. Although, ladies and gentlemen, we're not suggesting that you stop drinking water and only drink wine. That's a disclaimer from this evening. Regardless of whether animals have a sense of humour or not, Chris, how important do you think humour is for human beings?
I think it's really vital. My wife teaches English to mainly refugees and migrants who have very little. She prefers to teach to like what are called level 0 amount of English, and she's found the number one thing that unites her classes, whether the students are from Afghanistan or Syria or Vietnam or wherever, is that they all somehow work together with this kind of sense of humor. Someone's trying to get up and say something in front, and then they get something wrong, and they all kind of laugh together or laugh at that one person. It's kind of a thing it is a universal language. It's the number one tool she uses to teach English. And I think just in so many cultures, except for Germany, it's very important. I've been to Germany. They have a great sense of humour, but they are masters of deadpan.
You know what, as a Lutheran...
Masters of deadpan.
Yeah. Exhibit A. Very good. So, Jace, we're talking about humour. It's universal. I remember, I think it was Billy Connolly did a set talking about how, farts are funny to everyone. Even a baby can't talk, doesn't know any jokes. Fart, get a giggle. So what do you think the world would look like if there was no humour?
I don't know. All I know is what I see. And what I see in comedy is, mostly good things, and how comedy educates, like you said, and can be used for good things. And so the only way I can imagine that is by the opposite. And one of my favourite writers is Dr. Seuss, and he said, humour lets you see things that are out of whack. And the moment that you can see something that's out of whack, you can then fix it. And so I can't imagine a world devoid of humour. And when I read all these books and history of concentration camps and how humour became the survival mechanism and that kept the people alive. And so I don't want to think about a world that does not laugh.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine, isn't it? Yeah. What do you think, Sam?
Well, they say humour and laughter takes you from a very stressful situation to a situation where you're much more relaxed. So it's actually a great natural way of de-stressing. I was listening to Dan Carlin's podcast, Hardcore History, and he talks about just how World War I was so horrific. And they asked people, who do you think the toughest soldiers were? And they said it was the British and the Australians and the New Zealanders, because somehow they could always make fun of what was going on, no matter how horrific it was. So somehow they were able to laugh about things. And they say that the couples that survive the longest, married couples, are the ones who, in the middle of an argument, can just suddenly take a step back and say, can you look at what we're arguing over, and then have a laugh about it? So this is ability to just take a step out from where you are and just laugh at what's going on.
Yeah, that's good. On my Twitter feed, I had a quote pop up from a theologian. That's how exciting my life is. And Alistair McGrath said, like an artist, God's character is expressed in his creation. The world around us echoes and reflects something of God. So do you think that humour is one of those echoes? Do you think that we see something of God's character in that fact that humour seems to be kind of preset? It seems to be part of the biology of this place. Is that part of God's intention, or do you think God's actually, would be trying to stamp that out? What do you think?
Well, a big premise of the Christian belief is that we're made in the image of God. So somehow in our nature and our hardwiring, we image God. So, and then as I've mentioned also, he seems to have hardwired humour and laughter into his creation. And every now and then in the Bible, God, has a little bit of laugh and a giggle at what's going on. And there's a bit of farce and humour in the Bible as well. So one of the very early stories is how all the humans got together and they said, okay, we're going to show God. And they try to build a tower as high as they can to the heavens to show God how amazing they are. And it says in the story, and then God walked around and said, had to look down. What is going on? Can anyone tell me what's going on? Let us come down and see what they're doing. So it's this farcical moment. And I think that programs a lot of farce that's in the Bible.
Okay, right. So you think there's even humour in the Bible. That's cool. Jace, what do you think? What does humour in the world tell us about God's character, if anything?
like what Sam was saying, like one of my favourite, I would sit in Bible college at the back because I'm Lutheran, and I would sit and read the works of Calvin and Hobbes, and I would sit there and people would look at me and they would judge me, but I knew that I was learning something that was greater at the time. And there is a cartoon, there's one where Calvin is staring in the mirror, he's got his shirt off and he goes, "Look at me, made in the image of God, yes sir." And Hobbes is just, he's the philosopher, he smacked his head and he goes, "Yeah, God must have a goofy sense of humour,"
Yeah.
And but like you said, like if God laughs and we're in the image, then we laugh. We have that humour. But unfortunately, like which George Bernard Shaw would say, like we then return the favour and we create God in our image, and so we kind of put that we create God as something as this context of which is what God would laugh at our plans, and just go, "I'm God."
Yeah. So another quote. Christopher Hitchens, a famous atheist who died in 2011, he describes the Bible as being put together by crude, uncultured human mammals. And I think we often see the Bible, or it's certainly presented as being very old, which it is. That's a fair cop. But it's often presented as being, very boring and very dry. Chris, do you think there's any humour in the Bible, and you can't use the Tower of Babel as an example?
I think there is, yeah. I think a lot of it has been possibly lost in both translation and transcription, like as it was written. A lot of things are not funny when they're written down, but very funny when you see what's actually happening. I think possibly the oldest book of the Bible is Job. None of that's funny. None of it. Probably the oldest book is Job, and God is talking to Job and saying, "Oh, did wisdom begin with you?" And it's God talking to Job just really sarcastically for, I think, 3 or 4 solid chapters, going through all of the things in the world, going, "Oh, were you there when I laid the foundations of the earth? Were you there? Yeah. Nah, you weren't," sort of thing. Like just being really sarcastic in the face of Job. Really not only getting his point across, but just driving his point into the ground, which I think exaggeration, a pretty good type of humour. I think especially when you get to the New Testament, you get to Jesus and you get to see what God is like walking around with skin on.
Well, that was going to be my question. Is Jesus funny? Like, do you think Jesus is funny?
I think Jesus, as he had 5,000 people following him. He was possibly a wonderful, gifted teacher, but probably also very funny. He spoke in parables, really strange things, hard to understand, and some of those were really funny, like saying, you've got a little speck in your eye, but you've got a giant log just protruding out of your skull. Like, I think that's a kind of a funny image. Unfortunately, because of the Bible, and we're so familiar with it, that we don't even find those things funny now, even when it's pointed out. I think that's meant to be funny. Just like, but I'm really overly familiar with it. So,
and I guess maybe that's something we need to, think about. How do we rediscover? How do we refresh these ancient stories that are so familiar with us? And I wonder, is that possible? What about you, Jace? What do you think is the, classic Jesus? If there's any moments
Classic
like
Jesus.
that. That's right.
Like Jesus, it was like what Chris is talking about, hyperbole. When you, and as a comic, you embellish and you extend a point to get that point stronger. And so the speck and the log, I think the disciples would have heard that and just imagined that and just gone, "That's funny," There's a lot of irony in Old Testament, especially. And one of my favourites is Jonah, where Jonah is asked, "Go here," and just say, "Turn." It's something like 4 words in Hebrew. It's something very small. And then he runs away, and it's 4 chapters, and he has a little whinge, and it's just this. All he had to do, he finally comes back, and he just goes, "Oh, there's the words." And he could have just done that like that, and so there's just this irony that he could have just done it like that, but he had to go through all these other things that made it, which kind of make the book of Jonah kind of amazing in terms of looking at ironic. And
Yeah,
stuff. And I think Hebrews, in their culture and that passed down and that verbal translation, they would have relied a lot on the irony.
Yeah, and I think it is interesting that those stories have lasted through the years, especially in as children's sort of stories and children's. But I don't think it's just because it's a straight narrative. I think there's something in that is kind of a delightful story. I think there's something in that kids get.
Like a slave will set us free. No, that's not going to happen. That's
Yeah,
ironic, but it happened.
Yeah, that's right. Sam, what do you think? Jesus funny or?
Well, the interesting thing was the criticism of Jesus was he wasn't serious enough. They were saying, why aren't you taking this seriously? He says, well, because it's not like there's a funeral. No one's died. The Son of God is here. This is time to party and have fun. And a big criticism of Jesus was that he ate too much and drank too much. So he really saw himself as the party god. And what's interesting, I tell my friends, the very first commandment in the Bible was to have sex. It was, fill the earth and multiply. And that's a lot of sex you got to have if you begin with 2 people. You got to fill the earth. So when we had 2 kids, someone said to me, okay, you've multiplied, but you haven't filled the earth yet. They're like, whoa, okay, that's a lot of work to fill the earth. So the very first command is to have a sex and a lot of sex. And the very first miracle from Jesus was to turn water into wine, and a lot of good wine. And if you read the original Greek, it says that they're saying that the guests have had enough. They're drunk already, Jesus. They don't need more wine. They don't need more good wine. So this is sex and wine. This is the party god. He really is. and that was the complaint. Jesus, you're not serious enough. You're always partying. You always seem to be eating, drinking, and laughing. And I think that if you go back to your Bible and reread the story of Jesus coming back from the dead, there's actually a moment where he pranks his disciples because 2 guys are walking to Emmaus and they're just down and miserable. Jesus, the Messiah, they put their faith in him. Now he's dead. And then so Jesus actually comes up behind them and he says, why are you guys so miserable? And they go, they say to him, because they can't recognize him, they're not expecting him to be back from the dead, have you heard what's gone on the last few days in Jerusalem? And Jesus goes, deadpans, what things?
He's undercover boss.
Yeah, so they actually pranks him. And then even all his parables are set up as jokes. There was a Levite, there was a priest, and there was a Samaritan. Yeah. Or 2 men going to the temple to pray.
I like that. So I don't know if maybe you've never thought about God as Jesus as the party god, but we've just been talking about eating and drinking. How about we do a little bit more of that? We're going to take a quick break, grab another drink. There's some food coming around. We'll be back in a few minutes. Thanks, guys.